Hello everyone, my name is Jesus Reyes. This video is having to do with the Not Just Pyramids, Explorers, and Heroes analysis. And today is October 26th. And well, here we go. What I got most about this chapter was that a lot of it was possible due to the fact that food surplus allowed for specialization in the different Mesoamerica civilizations. They relied heavily on maize. They planted that throughout Central America, Central Mexico, South Mexico, all that. And it really spread into like even parts like where Arizona would be in like Southwest today United States, present day United States. Along with maize, they also planted a lot of squash and beans. One of the first great cities that was created was Teotihuacan, which had over about like 150,000 people. It was actually one of the largest cities in the world, second outside of China. The chapter also talked about how people probably came to be in what today is like South America, North America, which was the Bering Strait ice bridge, which probably melted around 9,000 BC. So that was probably the last of the migration that happened around that time, because it's unknown the exact date for when North America and South America became popularized by any types of people. And around 3000 BC is when they started seeing the surplus in food. One of the other first big civilizations was Olmeca, which is the mother culture of Mexico. Well, that's what a lot of people have known it to be, which also later was adopted to be Maya, or by the Mayans. Along with the spread of surplus in food, they also started spreading the use of pottery, which allowed for food to be stored and so on. That's when around like Mayans came to be, and they had three. Actually, no, I think it's still Mecca. And they actually had three calendars. They had the religious 260-day calendar. They also had the solar calendar with 365 days, similar to ours today. And then they also had a third calendar, which is a combination of both, which sometimes even like controlled what a baby would be called or named, depending on the day it was born. During this time period in Olmeca, religion and the natural world, it really inspired a lot of their art. Now, Maya began to appear around 1800 BC, and they were very experimental with their agriculture. They tried many different types of ducks and trenches and all that. So they were really trying to figure out what the best way was to feed 150,000 people, or like thousands of people, pretty much. They were also great astronomers, the Mayans. They were able to link earthly events to events that happen in space, in the heavens. And another interesting fact that I saw was that Maya also had glyphs that suggested homosexuality. It didn't really explain whether or not it was accepted, but it was like a known fact that it existed. Another interesting fact about the Mayans was that the common people lived to be about like 40 years old, while the ruling class could live up to like 100 years old, which really showed the class structure divide that started to happen when civilizations began to form. It wasn't just about like trying to feed everybody in the village and everybody kind of pitching in. You really started seeing a divide of the noble class and the common class. They also had a number system. The Mayans, they had a number system based on 20, with three symbols: a bar for 5, a dot for 1, and a shell for 0. They were one of the first civilizations to have an idea of 0. Others would either just go from 1, 2, 3, and they would just start up from there. Starting around like 909 AD, Maya started to kind of go down, because you started seeing less and less new buildings, new cities, new temples being built. And then that's when the chapter kind of started talking about Teotihuacan again, which it referred to it as the city of gods this time. It was one of the very first primary centers of Mesoamerica. It eventually broke up into like multiple city-states due to internal warfare, overpopularization. They weren't able to feed everybody, so you really started seeing like a period, how I mentioned before, of secularization, which they really started taking out religion being so important, which it still was, because all of the civilizations had like an important shaman figure or priest figure. But during this time period, they started seeing more of a political aspect to take control of like the noble class. The Toltera emerged as the dominant tribe during this time. Their capital was Tula, and it was like right in the central Mexico, and it controlled a lot of what like today's central Mexico is. Eventually, the Zapoteca people arrived, and they were the occupants of the Valley of Oaxaca. And then the Tarasco people came in about like 12th century. They ruled for most of West. They ruled the most of West Mexico, and they were real great metal workers, which was proven to be that they adapted it from neighboring tribes, which happened a lot because there was a lot of trading between these areas. So a lot of ideas got shared as well. A lot of specializations got shared, but they were really great metal workers apparently. But they weren't the greatest of traders, unlike the Mayans, who would trade as far as up to like present day Arizona, when they were like in the south part of Mexico, I believe. And then around between 1325 and 1345 AD is when you started seeing the Azteca be founded, with their capital city of Tenochtitlan, which was on an island in Lake Texcoco, which later was drained to be present-day Mexico City. And the people from that like created the Azteca, and I also believe the Tarasco, were most likely nomads who came in from the north and just kind of took over the other area. The Aztecas were believed to be from this mythical place called Aztlan, which was actually mentioned in the Chicano documentaries that we watched previously. Which what Aztlan was believed to be in present day Southwest United States. The Aztecas were excelled in the building arts, and there were great agriculture people as well. They were able to farm on raised fields. That way they could farm year round, even during droughts, which really helped them out when it came to using small areas to feed a lot of people instead of just lots of land for agriculture. But they also had a divide between like the common folk and the noble folk. They had two schools, one that was specifically for common, and they had another one for the nobility. Both taught basic history, religious practices, dances, rituals. But the nobility schools also taught, like, if I remember correctly, was like more math, economics, political, how to lead. Pretty much, they were trying to raise like the future leaders of their civilizations. And that's when you started like kind of seeing it again go from kinship to a more class structured society. But women did have equal rights in the law. They were able to own land, be vendors, just as long as you were in the knight class for like society. Human sacrifices were common, but just like in all the other Mesoamerican civilizations, it was very common. But for the Aztecas, they believed that sacrifices appeased the sun god, or the sun, which pretty much controlled their agriculture. So when they started going into a drought, they really tried to sacrifice more people so that they could appease those gods. But yeah, I pretty much found out that this whole like Mesoamerica, it was very interconnected. It was a very interconnected world. If something happened in one city, it would most likely affect another neighboring city because they were constantly trading, or they were constantly just sharing ideas. So that's what I learned about from the first chapter.